Ever feel like you're trying to solve these huge e-problems
Yes.
with one hand tied behind your back?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about sustainability here.
Right.
Those big, complex issues that need like a total rethink.
Yeah.
And you know what might just help?
What's that?
It's not about playing it safe,
Okay.
but creating spaces that are actually built for shaking things up.
Interesting.
We're calling them transformative spaces.
Okay.
And today's deep dive is going to break down exactly what that means for you.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right, so we're moving past the idea of these spaces being just safe.
Okay.
Those have their place, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But to really dig into the tough stuff,
Right.
we need more.
Okay.
We need spaces that welcome everyone's voice. And it's not just everyone's voice,
Yeah.
but they're not afraid of a little healthy debate.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Because, let's be real,
Yeah.
challenging the way things have always been done,
Yeah.
it's rarely comfortable.
Okay, so let's unpack this whole transformative spaces concept.
Okay.
We dug into a chapter from the Handbook of Transdisciplinarity
Okay.
by Aniek Hebink and their team,
Right.
and they define these spaces as collaborative environments.
Mm-hmm.
Think of them like testing grounds where people can experiment with new approaches,
I like that.
especially within those tricky social and environmental systems.
Yeah.
We're always trying to improve.
Right. And what's key is this research really stresses
Okay.
how crucial these spaces are
Yeah.
for tackling those sustainability challenges.
Right.
Especially as we look at the bigger picture,
Mm-hmm.
the global picture.
Right.
A lot of the work so far has been focused on the global north.
Okay.
But Hevink's team is shining a light on the incredible insights we can gain
Yeah.
from projects and perspectives in the global south.
This is where it gets really interesting for you because those Global South projects,
Right.
with their emphasis on understanding power dynamics
Mm.
and cultural context, have so much to teach us about building effective transformative spaces.
Yes.
Anywhere.
It's true.
One example they dive into is the Tea Group P project,
Okay.
which focused on groundwater management
Hmm?
in informal settlements across Tanzania, Ghana, and Uganda.
The Tea Group E project is a fantastic real-world example
Okay.
of how these principles actually play out.
Okay.
Let's take the principle of embedding into the local context.
Okay.
Tea Group E actually made a major shift
Oh, really?
based on what the community told them.
Interesting.
They started out looking at water access.
Okay.
But guess what?
What?
The community was far more concerned with waste management
Wow.
and sanitation.
So they listened to what the people actually needed,
Right.
even if it meant going beyond their initial research plan?
Exactly.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Letting the context guide you
Mhm.
rather than trying to force a solution that might not fit.
Yeah. And it...
It reminds me of that saying,
What that?
don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole, right? Each context is unique,
It is.
and we can't just assume one size fits all.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this leads us to the next principle.
Okay.
Creating a safe enough space.
Safe enough?
I notice it's not completely safe
Okay.
because the Tea Group E project actually found
Yeah.
that a certain level of productive disagreement, you need a little bit of that,
Yeah.
can be critical for pushing real change.
Interesting.
It's about finding that sweet spot where everyone feels comfortable speaking their mind,
Right.
even if their views challenge the norm.
Because let's be real,
Yeah.
real change can ruffle some feathers.
It can.
It's about addressing those power imbalances,
It is.
making sure everyone has a seat at the table,
Yes.
especially those who've been historically excluded or marginalized.
And that's something the Tea Group E team learned firsthand.
Really?
They had to navigate complex power dynamics,
Oh, wow.
particularly when it came to encouraging women's participation
Yeah.
in certain communities.
Yeah.
It was a process of constant adaptation,
Wow.
finding ways to ensure those who were often silent felt empowered to speak up.
I bet that wasn't always easy.
No,
It takes guts to speak up,
it does.
especially when you're challenging the way things have always been done.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
They had to acknowledge
Mm-hmm.
that these spaces might feel risky for some,
Yeah.
especially those who are speaking truth to power.
Right.
But by being sensitive to these dynamics
Yeah.
and adapting their approach,
Okay.
they were able to create a space
Yeah.
where those crucial, often unheard voices
Mhm.
could finally be amplified.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
We're going to dive into the nitty-gritty of how they did that after
Right.
a quick break.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about giving those voices a microphone, though.
Right.
It was about creating an environment
Yeah.
where those
Yeah.
voices could actually spark real action.
Oh, interesting.
Now, here's the thing about these transformative spaces.
What's that?
They're not a quick fix.
Right. But rather a launching pad for long-term change.
Okay, it's like planting a seed, right?
Exactly.
You need those perfect conditions for it to blossom.
Yeah.
You can't just snap your fingers
Right.
and expect to solve these deep-rooted sustainability issues overnight.
Absolutely.
Right.
The T Group P project showed
Okay.
how these spaces can empower communities and
Yeah.
forge new alliances.
Mhm.
They actually helped connect
Really?
community members with local authorities
Uh-huh.
in places like Kampala,
Okay.
which led to things like community-led cleanup efforts
Ah.
and improved water services.
So it's about walking the walk,
Exactly.
not just talking the talk.
It is.
Those collaborative efforts like the community mapping and
Yeah.
awareness campaigns you mentioned,
Right.
they paint a really clear picture of how these transformative spaces
Yes.
can lead to tangible change on the ground.
Now, before we get ahead of ourselves,
Okay.
remember what we said about this being a process.
Right. A big part of that is managing expectations.
Yeah.
Transformative change.
Right.
Especially when you're dealing with these massive systemic issues.
Right.
Well, it doesn't happen overnight.
It takes time.
It does.
Right.
It's about taking that first step.
Yeah.
Nurturing those initial sparks of change.
Okay.
And understanding that the road ahead might have a few twists and turns.
You're talking about a marathon, not a sprint, right?
It definitely
You
is.
say it takes stamina.
It definitely does. There will be moments when you hit those bumps in the road,
Right.
distrust in authorities,
Yeah.
difficulty getting everyone to participate equally.
Right.
But even those challenges,
Yeah.
they hold valuable lessons.
It's all about learning
It is.
and adapting as you go.
Absolutely.
So to bring this back to you,
Yeah.
why should you care about transformative spaces?
Because the world's bursting with
Yeah.
these huge, complex problems
Mm-hmm.
that are begging for fresh solutions. Think climate change,
Mhm.
social injustice, economic inequality.
Right.
These issues they demand innovative,
Right.
collaborative action.
Mm-hmm.
And those solutions, they often emerge from spaces
Right.
where diverse voices can come together
Yeah.
and challenge the way things have always been done.
And we're not just talking about some vague feel-good sentiment here.
No.
The T Group P project demonstrated
Yeah.
that when you prioritize understanding the local context and navigating those power dynamics effectively,
Right.
you can empower communities to take charge of their own destinies.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Real lasting change.
Yeah.
It doesn't trickle down from the top.
Right.
It grows from the ground up,
Okay.
from individuals coming together
Right.
to find solutions that work for them.
And this is where those specific examples from T Group UP really get me fired up.
Oh, yeah.
Remember how they used music and theater to get people engaged?
Yes. I love that.
Can you believe that?
It's incredible.
They tapped into these creative,
Right.
culturally relevant mediums to spread awareness about sanitation
Right.
and get entire communities energized
Yeah.
and involved.
Absolutely.
It's proof that we can tackle these tough issues
Yes.
in a way that's engaging and inspiring.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this research so incredibly valuable.
Right.
The T Group P team didn't just throw a theoretical framework at us.
No, they didn't.
They rolled up their sleeves
Yeah, they did.
and showed us how these principles translate into action.
Right.
And that's something you can grab hold of
It is.
and apply to your own work,
Yeah.
your own community.
Okay, so let's say you're ready to dive in.
Okay.
You're inspired.
Right.
You want to start creating your own transformative space.
Right. What do you do?
What are some key things to keep in mind?
Flexibility is key.
Okay.
Remember, these spaces are dynamic.
Okay.
You have to be ready to adapt your approach
Mm-hmm.
depending on the context,
Okay.
the people involved,
Yeah.
and the challenges that pop up along the way.
Right.
Think of it like navigating a winding river.
Okay.
You've got to be ready to adjust your course
Right.
when you hit those rapids.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
So it's about being adaptable
It is.
and responsive.
Yeah.
What else?
You need to be intentional
Okay.
about creating a space
Mhm.
where everyone feels heard
Yes.
and valued.
Right.
This means addressing those power imbalances head on,
It does.
giving a platform to those who are often overlooked,
Right.
and nurturing a culture of respect and empathy.
You're telling me
Right.
it takes real effort
It does.
to shift those ingrained power dynamics.
And don't forget,
Okay.
these conversations can be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
even risky for some
Mhm.
people.
Right?
You need to make sure everyone feels safe enough
Yeah.
to be vulnerable,
Right.
challenge the norm,
Yeah.
and disagree respectfully.
Right.
This brings us back to that idea
Yeah.
of a safe enough space.
Yeah. Right. It's not about pretending disagreements don't exist.
Right.
It's about channeling those differences productively.
Exactly.
Let's be honest. When we're talking about systemic change,
Yeah.
a little friction can actually be a good thing.
Right.
A sign that we're pushing boundaries.
Exactly.
Right.
Lean into that friction,
Okay.
but always in a way
Yeah.
that builds understanding
Right.
and helps everyone grow.
Right.
Now, here's another crucial point.
Okay.
Transformative change
Okay.
is a marathon,
Yes.
not a sprint.
We've said that.
You need to brace yourself
Okay.
for setbacks, delays, and unexpected detours.
Yeah.
It's a long game.
And it takes serious resilience
It does.
to stay the course,
Mhm.
especially when progress feels slow
Yes.
or you encounter resistance.
Absolutely.
Right.
There will be times when you question
Right.
if it's worth the struggle.
Yeah.
But in those moments,
Yeah.
remind yourself of the bigger picture,
Oh.
that vision of a more just and sustainable future.
Yeah.
Don't lose sight of the reason you started down this path in the first place.
It's about keeping your eyes on the prize.
It is.
And with that in mind,
Right.
let's move on to our final part,
Okay.
where we'll explore how to turn those sparks of change into something lasting and powerful. So we're talking about transforming those initial sparks of change into a bonfire,
Right.
something that can really light the way forward.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we make sure
That's the question.
those flames don't die out?
Yeah. How do we build something that lasts?
Right.
It's about shifting our mindset, I think,
Okay.
from short-term projects
Okay.
to long-term impact.
Right.
It's about asking ourselves,
Yeah.
how can we equip communities to keep the momentum going,
Right.
even after the initial project or funding runs out?
Right.
How do we weave collaboration and knowledge sharing
Okay.
into the very fabric of the community?
Right.
How do we ensure those hard-won lessons
Yeah.
from our transformative space
Right.
continue to shape decisions and actions, even after the formal structure of the project is wrapped up?
I love that.
Yeah.
Weaving it into the fabric of the community.
Right.
It's like the difference between a pop-up shop
Right.
and a thriving local business.
Right.
One's here and gone in a flash.
Right.
While the other is deeply rooted
Mm.
part of the community's DNA.
It is.
And just like a successful business,
Yeah,
creating lasting change requires planning,
it does.
investment, and a commitment to nurturing the relationships and
Right.
structures that make it all possible.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
It's about embedding those core values,
Okay.
collaboration, inclusivity, continuous learning,
Right.
into the DNA of the system you're trying to transform.
Yeah.
And we both know that doesn't happen overnight.
It takes time.
It demands time, dedication,
Right.
and a willingness to stay flexible, to keep learning as you go.
And maybe a little of that healthy friction we talked about earlier, right? Because let's be real,
Yeah.
staying open to dialogue,
Mhm.
challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
It's easy when everyone's excited about something new,
Right.
but the real test comes later,
Yes.
when the initial buzz wears off.
You're so right.
Right.
When resources get tight, when you hit roadblocks,
Yeah.
when that initial wave of enthusiasm starts to fade,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you need those strong foundations in place.
Right.
Solid relationships,
Right.
shared values,
Yeah.
open communication channels.
Right.
Those are the things that will help you weather the storms
Right, exactly.
and keep moving forward.
It's about digging in your heels.
It is.
And remembering why you started on this journey in the first place.
Yeah.
Believing in the power of that transformative space, you
Yeah.
help to create
Yeah.
potential it has to create a more just and sustainable world.
Exactly.
Right.
And sometimes the most transformative spaces
Yeah.
are the ones that eventually become self-sustaining,
Wow, that's amazing.
where the community takes the reins
Yeah.
and continues to drive change
Right.
long after the so-called experts have moved on.
Wow.
It's about empowering people to become architects of their own destiny.
Now, that is a truly inspiring vision.
It is.
And it brings us back to the heart of our deep dive today.
Okay.
It's not just about fleeting moments of transformation.
Right.
It's about planting those seeds of change
Mm.
that have the power to grow into something truly remarkable.
It is.
Something that can reshape the very systems that govern our lives
Yeah.
and create a world that is more just,
It's what it's all about.
more equitable, and
Yeah.
more sustainable for generations to come.
And we all have a part to play in creating that future.
We do.
It starts with embracing the principles of transformative spaces.
Okay.
Not just in those big global initiatives,
Right.
but in our everyday lives,
Mm-hmm.
in our workplaces, in
Yeah.
our communities.
Mm-hmm.
It's about having those courageous conversations,
Yes.
questioning the status quo,
Right.
and never giving up on the dream of a better world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Correct.
I want to leave you with this.
Hey, what's that?
What transformative space will you create today?
What small act of courage, what collaboration,
Right.
what act of compassion can you take
Right.
to ignite change in your own corner of the world?
Love it.
Because the journey to a brighter tomorrow
Yes.
starts with each and every one of us.
That's it for today's deep dive. Thanks so much for listening, everybody.